Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session.
Hi, it's Jonathan Goldhill, and welcome back to another episode of the Disruptive Successor Show. And today's guest is Madelyn Dunlap, who is the Director of Business Development at the ReWild Group. She's an entrepreneur and a business owner who joined the ReWild Group after her own experience as a manager in a company that went from good to great following grad school. She's going to talk to us about the stages of growth that a company goes through, and what are some of the biggest misconceptions about the stages of growth, and why it's so important to understand these different 7 stages of growth. If you're watching us on YouTube, then you'll see the slide for the 7 stages of growth. If you can join us on YouTube, check it out there. Welcome to the show, Madelyn.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
All right, so let's start with a little bit of background about you. Like, what did you study in school? What was your experience when you got out as an entrepreneur? And, just let's start us there with what your background and your story is.
Sure. So I started in an entrepreneurial family at a very, very young age. So entrepreneurship was something that I just grew up with. Went to school for finance, accounting, economics, and then my master's program was in decision sciences. I was fascinated with not just data, but what data can do for us, how we can use this information to make better decisions and business, more successful decisions. So went through 6 years of school. I worked my way through school, and as a young manager thought, well, I've got everything I need. I just went through all this school. I spent all this money. I'm ready. And it turns out I didn't have everything that I needed. While it gave me great things going to school, I wasn't prepared for, or I really lacked an understanding of how to help the business succeed. I really had no place to start. I was fortunate that the CEO I was working with was a great mentor and allowed me to be part of a leadership team. And really, he was on this journey at 10 years into the business to say, this is a lifestyle business, but I want it to be more than that. So how do I do that? And through that, he found the stages of growth. And I got to have this firsthand experience being part of a leadership team, learning the stages of growth, applying it, making mistakes as we applied it, and learning from it. But really, at the end of the day, seeing that what we learned bridged that gap for me. It bridged that gap for the leadership team overall. And we weren't working harder. We were maybe that cliche saying, working smarter. But at the end of the day, the efforts we were making were really helping our business grow. The bottom line, the culture was stronger. We had reduced turnover to virtually zero. Everything about the business felt and was stronger. And so when I left from that business, because the business was acquired kind of 3 years into our growth journey, I had this new perspective that there are so many business owners out there, ones that I've been a part of, ones that I've got to witness without being a part of, that are not thriving, but that this information really could make a difference. And so when the ReWild Group was founded by that CEO who went out and acquired the methodology, he said, we have to take this to more businesses. I jumped on board because I knew it made a difference.
So let's talk about, because you and I are in agreement on this, why it's important to understand that there's these different stages of growth that a company goes through. And let me just start by sharing that when I first started coaching companies, an exercise that you would take my clients through in a workshop setting was handing them a piece of paper with a bunch of numbers, 1 through 100, jumbled on the page. And I asked them to circle 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, go as fast as they could, find them in order, and I'd give them 30 seconds. And sometimes I get people who get up to 22, usually like they find 7, maybe 13 numbers within 30 seconds. And then I did it again. But this time I had broken the piece of paper into quadrants where they could start to see quickly that there now was a pattern. And I did the same thing, gave it to them 30 seconds more, do it again, and they would double their scores. Some people, the ones who got up to like 22, they only went from 22 to 28 or 26 or something. But the people who did 7 to 13, they doubled their scores. And my point was, the metaphor was, you see that when you start to see that there's a structure to businesses, and you can see it through a systematic lens, that you'll start to see what you need to do and how you need to look at your business differently. So you're shaking your head. It's resonating with you.
It's brilliant. I love that exercise and want to steal it from you, actually, Jonathan.
Happy to give it to you guys.
Because it's absolutely the case. It is absolutely the case that there are these structures and there are these things at work in your business that are describable, decipherable, recognizable, understandable patterns. Yet, if you do not understand them, you miss out on the ability to really leverage those things. What we see is just a lot of chaos, a lot of challenges. And if we can start to, in the same way in your exercise, you start to organize them into quadrants. If our minds can do that, if we can teach ourselves to do that within our businesses, we go further, right? We can circle more numbers more quickly. And I think it's not just the result. It's also how you feel when you're doing it, that there is a level of confidence and surety in your day-to-day interactions that is noticeably lacking when all you see is chaos.
Right. And so in a few moments, I want to get into what that framework is that you guys have. I used to present what I think was like a 6 stages of growth. And I'm guessing yours is fairly similar, but like the first stage was kind of startup, and you were trying to figure out what's your business model, how do you make money, and you're trying to put some processes into place to just basically deliver your service, get paid, be positive cash flow, but it's very disorganized. And then the second stage was like getting to that cash flow positive, still disorder, starting to put some order in place, starting to hire, some key people. Maybe the first stage, you're 10 people or less, typically. In the second stage, you're getting to 10 people, and now you're hiring a next manager who can replicate some of what you do, that you can delegate. So now you can build a team of 20, which is basically 2 teams with, helpers of 10 each or something like that. And so we progressed along ultimately through these multiple stages where most of my clients were probably 3rd stage companies, where I was helping them to really put systems and processes and put the right people in the right seats and get them to be able to scale up so they have a sellable business. Ultimately, that was stage 5. So take us through your stages
Yeah.
As I pull up this slide and share it on the screen, take us through what your stages are.
Yeah. So
Let's walk through this.
So there's 7 of them, and probably the most differentiating, or kind of the baseline, is the number of full-time employees or full-time equivalents determines your stage of growth. And we could have a whole podcast on talking about the research that went into this and why that is, but I'll try and touch on it, do justice briefly. As you add people to your organization, you add complexity. Each person comes to your organization with skills and with their own background. And as you add them, the relationships, the interrelationship, it doesn't just increase, it really multiplies, it grows exponentially.
Yep.
And so in our research, what we find is that determining factor of what you need to build a business, the best surrogate indicator of that is going to be the number of employees. So we've got, as you said, Jonathan, 1 through 10 in startup, and we can walk through each of these. I know we have more detailed slides, but we go up to around 350 employees. So this really is a business growth system for small to mid-sized businesses, is what it's designed for.
Gotcha. And so in the first stage, you talk about, it kind of goes from flood zone to wind tunnel, flood zone to wind tunnel.
Yeah.
Every other stage is either flood zone, in between the two stages, flood zone and wind tunnel. What's meant by that term?
Yeah, so those are what are called transition zones. And transition zones are just like they sound. It's when a stage 1 is transitioning into stage 2. And what we see is that there is a period of chaos and 2 specific and unique transition zones. A flood zone is really the chaos, the source of the chaos comes from being overwhelmed, typically by the amount of work to be done. Right. Whereas a wind tunnel, slightly different, it's a chaos that's brought on by systems and processes that no longer support the organization. So at each of these stage thresholds, you have this either a volume, usually a volume issue, or a system process issue that does require some level of re-engineering or reworking in order to pass into stage 2. It doesn't mean you can't hire enough people to put you in stage 2. And we'll probably touch on this a little later, but just because you are in a specific stage does not mean you're operating as a true stage 2 business or whatever that stage is. You can add enough people to your organization that you reach into a stage, but probably not with great structure or resilience at that stage.
Makes sense. Mm-hmm. So the wind tunnel, if I understand it, was you're saying that can you explain that again? You have processes maybe in place, but they're no longer the ones that you need to be following?
So a wind tunnel is really where the systems and processes that you have in place start to erode given the complexity in the organization. So I think of a really, really simple example. Mm-hmm. Let's say a restaurant. An ordering system. And let's say historically, kind of had one person organizing all the orders and the inventory, and it's done manually. But eventually, as the organization grows, that system, it won't support growth to the next level. So that's an example, a really simple example of what we typically see in a wind tunnel. It could be systems as simple as how an organization is tracking time. It could be systems as critical as project management systems. It could be human resource systems that no longer support the organization. It doesn't mean all your systems are just thrown to the wayside at that point, but typically that when you're going from stage 2 to stage 3, and then again 4 to 5 and 6 to 7, these are stage transitions that are going to require some critical looking and thinking on your processes.
Okay, so let me walk through the stages. So startup is 1 to 10 employees at stage 1. Mm-hmm. Stage 2 is 11 to 19 employees, and that's ramp up. Stage 3 is 20 to 34 employees, and that's delegation. Stage 4 is 35 to 57 employees, and that's professional. Now, most of the people that come to me to start work are usually somewhere between 11 and 50 employees when we start working together. Sometimes they're 150 or more, but a lot of them are right in that, ramp up, delegation, professional. Now, stage 5, 58 to 95 employees is integration. Stage 6, 96 to 160 employees is strategic. Stage 7, 161 to 350 employees is visionary. So let's break this conversation down into a couple things. One is, let's have you describe a little bit about what ramp up, delegation, professional, integration, strategic, and visionary look like. And 2, like how you got to figure out these numbers of employees. So like, is this, how science-based is it? Maybe you want to start with that for those,
Sure.
for those sort of engineering, those high C on the DISC profile. Like, how did you document, quantify this? Was it based on anecdotal experience or actually scientific research?
Yeah. So I can't take credit for it, but I'll speak in terms of the methodology and how it was formulated. An individual by the name of James Fisher, who was just an inquisitive entrepreneur by nature, started out this research about 3 decades ago. And he observed, worked with, studied, surveyed organizations primarily in the US, but some international organizations across industries. And what he was looking for was patterns. And his findings, and this is kind of probably maybe a little simplistic, but his findings were detailed originally in a book called Navigating the Growth Curve. And that's where he originally presented his idea of these stages of growth with these specific numbers. And when you talk to him, he will tell you that these numbers are absolute numbers he sees over and over again in the findings. And anecdotally, what I can share is that I've also watched this in my own organizations and in organizations that we've had the privilege of working with, that these numbers really do have almost an eerie truth to them. Now, there are, and not to overcomplicate it, but there are situations, especially and most commonly where organizations have grown up through the stages, reverted, and then grown back up, where you can see if it's not the first time an organization is in a stage, there can be some variation because of the growth that they had experienced. But really with quite remarkable accuracy, we see these stages being relevant.
Amazing. All right.
Yeah.
So what are the characteristics of the ramp up stage?
Yeah. So ramp up, and Jonathan, I don't know if you want to go to the next slide, or if that'd be helpful if we want to stay here on this blown out version.
Gotcha. Here we go.
Yeah, just a few bullet points. I like to see these visually. So just startup, it's what we already talked about, was small and agile, focus on profit. This is critical, having the right people, right? That tight-knit group. You're hiring generalists, not as much specialists. Going then to stage 2, which you were asking about originally. So ramp up. This is where I loved your example, Jonathan, that you're kind of get another supervisor or another lead somewhere in there. You're kind of doubling the team. Process becomes more important here as the organization grows. In stage 1, one of our rules is to really embrace the chaos and create process only where necessary. A lot of stage 1 businesses try to over-engineer their business and they stifle the business. In stage 2, process looks and needs to look a little different. Process becomes more important. You're trying to standardize and create consistency across a larger group of people. Profitable revenue is still a big focus here. And then this is a big one. Stage 2 is the last of the owner-centric stages. So stage 1 and 2 are owner-centric businesses. The business revolves around the owner. And then we go into this transition between stage 2 and stage 3, going from owner-centric to enterprise-centric. And enterprise-centric is where we've got a business that can stand somewhat independently of the CEO. It doesn't revolve around them. So that happens through the name of the stage, delegation. Delegation is critical here to achieving that enterprise-centric business. This is, in all of the stages, probably the most challenging transition from the owner's perspective, because the relationship with their business really shifts here. It is very, very different. Their role shifts. An early stage management team is really critical. Through that delegation, you see a lot of burnout CEOs here and in subsequent stages that don't get this piece right, that don't have that early stage management team to delegate to. As you go to then stage 4, that early stage management team needs to be professionalized. Professional is the name of this stage. And whether it's hiring in professional managers or training the management team, the level of management that's required at this stage is at a different level than prior stages. Those professionalized managers, one of the most important things they do is they create systems and processes within their functional areas within the organization. So you now have more specialized departments. You need managers that are able to oversee and grow those departments within your organization to have strength. Stage 5 then, as you go in 58 to 95 employees, the name of the stage is integration. And the reason is that all the work you did in stage 4 to really prop up and formalize both your departments and your managers over those departments can create silos. And so the name of this stage really nods to the fact that you've got to create this cohesive, integrated management team with those professionalized managers. Still lots of oversight and guidance by the CEO typically in this stage. And this is a training ground for that development of the eventual leadership team, which comes into play then in stage 6, where the name of the stage is strategic. This does not mean that you don't need to be strategic in all stages, but the level of strategic thinking and planning that's required at a stage 6 business is just a different level than what has been required in prior stages. And a big thing here is if you haven't built up that leadership team at this point, it can be really challenging to fulfill that need for the strategic thinking that's required to lead this size of an organization. Company culture is something we see as a big thing in this stage due to the size of the organization, making sure that company culture is maintained. And there's a focus on people here that, not that there isn't in other stages, but in order to maintain that company culture, this is an important theme. People is an important theme in stage 6. Heading all the way to visionary, then this last stage, that again, just like the strategic stage, it does not mean you don't need to be visionary in other stages. It just points to the fact that at this size of an organization, one of the greatest challenges is stagnation, that you are not being innovative. And so being the visionary stage really talks to recapturing that innovation, making sure that you're staying relevant in your marketplace. And ideally, you've built up a leadership team by this point that's able to help set that strategic vision and carry that vision out for the organization.
Super interesting. I'm not so sure that the employees exactly aligns with my experience. But I'm thinking that, typical with anything I do, I look for hacks, probably the way I get through it. I can see that this, just taken as a questionnaire, looking at each one of these points here allows someone to look at their business, an owner I'm talking about, to look at their business and say, where am I? And, I don't know, maybe it's just, plus we're good, delta, we need to make a change, minus, this is a real problem, but maybe just focus on where we're good, what needs to change, and then look at it. Because I can definitely see some of the issues from some of the larger size companies, but yet they have fewer people. And that's what makes it challenging, I think. But I really like that you've presented this framework, and I have my ideas about why it helps people. What's your company's ideas about why it's helpful to know what stage you're at?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I was just going to say that we've talked a lot about what is it, and the question of, well, why does that matter is a really important one. And you really hit it right on the head, Jonathan, is that it's a roadmap for most businesses. They see where they're at. They see where they want to go. They see what they've missed along the way. And in ways that is drawing the quadrants in that page of numbers to say, well, I know where to start. And what I've shared with you here is a very simple overview. There's a lot more detail and a lot more resources to dig into. But that truly is it, is that if you can draw a line and say, here's where we're at, and understand, let's take a tangible example. I'm in stage 5 and I don't have strong managers. That is the source of challenges, or we haven't gotten our processes figured out. In stage 2, we've been focused on profit, just like in stage 1, but it's chaos. So understanding the importance of profit, it really is that lens with which a business owner can look out at the chaos of their business or what feels overwhelming and say, okay, I can see the things that need to be achieved.
Understood. So tell us a little about what your company does and how your company helps entrepreneurs or coaches like myself take this stage of growth thinking and implement it into client companies.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. So we're an information idea company. We take this information to businesses and in a number of different ways. We find it's important to meet a business owner where they're at. So a lot of resources from our organization are poured into what we call the self-guided option. And so this is going to be all of our workshops, which we hold quarterly, that are free of charge, all our downloadable resources, and our guidebook series. So that at a low cost, both in time and money, a business leader can start learning these concepts and applying them to their business. And then for businesses who want to take it a step further, we have a coach-supported option and an advisor-led option. And that's where we partner with advisors and coaches across the globe who are trained in our methodology and can help a business leader walk through the stages of growth or work on specific areas of their business using our methodology.
Great. So the workshops that are being given, are these virtual? Are these in-person events or a mix?
They are, our certified advisors do hold workshops that are a mix of virtual and in-person, but at headquarters here in Denver, we hold quarterly workshops that are virtual. And actually we have one coming up on the 19th, and they're always recorded and are available for watching afterwards as well. They are workshops. So you print out your materials and you come with a pen in hand and no distractions, because you're going to get to work on your business.
So I think the term is these are workshops, not listen shops.
Exactly. Roll up your sleeves.
So July 19th, we're recording this on July 7th, everyone, but this probably won't get released until later in August. What's the next one after that?
After that, I don't have the date off the top of my head, but it's always the first month in the quarter.
Okay.
So that would be September would be our upcoming one.
Okay, great. Why the name ReWild?
Good question. Our name comes from the concept of rewilding in nature, and it really nods to our philosophy of how to help businesses. The most notable example of rewilding nature is Yellowstone National Park, where it was an ecosystem on the verge of collapse in the 1990s. And they tried all sorts of things to rid the park of the overabundance of elk. That was what the issue was. They'd increased hunting, they tried all different things, and it didn't solve the problem. What they ended up doing was introducing wolves into the park, and it impacted really everything about the park. And what we learn from the story of rewilding in Yellowstone is that a lot of times our solutions to problems are to go at that fire and put that fire out, go at that surface symptom problem and try to solve that. But that creates this cycle of just trying to play whack-a-mole. Instead, if what you do is take the time to look at the surface symptoms, there are too many elk in the park. There are, the foliage is being eroded. The rivers are meandering because the banks are eroding. My margins are suffering. There's turnover in my organization. Our quality is suffering. And get to the root problem and work there. That is really how you grow an organization sustainably. That's how you really can further and traverse these stages in a way that is healthy for you, healthy for the organization, and that you don't have to solve all the problems. A lot of times getting to that root cause, really, those surface symptoms you were seeing, they work themselves out if you can put your focus in the right spot. So organizational rewilding is what we talk about doing, and that's where our name comes from.
Gotcha. All right. So Madelyn, thanks for sharing with us the stages of growth. And I think it would be very interesting. The workshops are full day?
Nope, they are 60 minutes long.
Oh, okay.
We put you to work in 60 minutes and give you takeaways to continue on.
Great. And the cost of a workshop is how much?
They are complimentary.
Wow. Okay. So yes. If someone they're listening at a later time, they want to learn about workshop schedule, do they go to the rewildgroup.com?
Yep, rewildgroup.com. Click on free resources. There's a lot of free resources listed there, but workshops is going to be one of them. All our upcoming dates are there, as well as a link to any past workshops where you can watch and download and work through what we did last quarter, the year before. Is every
workshop the same, or is it like you focus on a different stage?
No, that's a great question. Sometimes we're focusing on specific stages. Other times we're focusing on a specific concept. So the one we did last quarter was on master processes. We taught specific concepts on how to create process in your organization and walked you through how to work on that with a process in your organization. This upcoming one, which should be available for recording here in a couple of weeks, is going to be on organizational structure. How do you organize work independent of people to make sure you're putting the right people in the right seats, and you're not totally out of luck when somebody walks away and you're stuck trying to find another Jill. So topical. Sometimes we'll talk I think our last one of this year in September is going to be on the 3 faces of a leader. Talks about being a visionary, a manager, and a specialist, and ideally how much time you put into each of those.
Okay, well, great. Madelyn, thanks so much for being on the show today, folks.
Thanks for having me.
If you are stuck, you're feeling overwhelmed, maybe overworked, you're looking for some clarity and solution, it might be really helpful to understand what stage of growth or stuck place you are. And the ReWild Group offers some unique resources in that regard. And probably having a coach to help you work through it will make a lot of sense. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Disruptive Successor Show. You know the drill. If you like this show, give us a 5-star rating review on your podcast listening app of choice. And please share it, subscribe, tell others about it. And thanks again for listening. And stay tuned for another episode next week.
This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.